Welcome everyone to Team Roles and Wraparound. Kim and I are thrilled to have you with us this morning, and we're going to be presenting about Team Roles and Wraparound. As Erin said, my name is Joanne Huss. I am the Peer Support and System of Care Implementation Manager and National Trainer at the Institute for Innovation at the University of Maryland. And Kim and I both travel around the country and train Wraparound and train on various roles that are included in Wraparound. And we're thrilled to be able to compile all those roles together and present them to you today. And I'm going to let Kim kick it off.
Hi, my name is Kim Eastup, as Erin said, with the University of Maryland School of Social Work. And we're just going to go ahead and just jump right in and get started. So Wraparound is a holistic process, an approach to care planning that differs from traditional case management or other types of services that you might be accustomed to, in that it really is about building a plan of care that is about bringing a group of people together around a common interest of mobilizing resources and supporting families in their homes and communities. The plan of care that results from this team process should reflect the best fit between the reason for referral, the family's vision and story, the team mission, strengths, needs, and strategies. It's also based on 10 wraparound principles, which Joanne and I are going to talk about together as we go through this, and I know that she wants to kick it off and talk about family voice and choice.
When we talk about family voice and choice, you'll notice that in our little circle there of principles that family voice and choice is in the middle. And that's because we feel that everything within Wraparound is based around the family and youth as they work together. We use the word family to include both the parent and the youth and the unified voice. And really when we talk about that, it's about families being full and active partners at every level of the wraparound process.
And it's also an individualized process in that it's not cookie cutter, that it's really tailored to the specific and unique culture and traditions of the family, as well as the needs that might be present that we're going to address. And it's not those typical kind of let's pull from our bookshelf types of services and supports, but really shifting from a service-driven system to a need-driven system and individualizing all of the components for each unique family that we partner with in this process.
So team-based includes the family, formal and informal support, service providers that are involved in the family's life, and everyone coming together as a cohesive team and really working to develop, implement, and evaluate the individualized plan of care and coming to agreement or coming to consensus.
And piggybacking on the principle of team-based is also the inclusion of natural supports and those natural helpers that are typically present in a family's life. In Wraparound, we purposefully seek them out and include them in the process. And this could include community supports as well as family members, friends, and those kinds of things, or people.
In collaboration, the team works together to develop, implement, and monitor a single WRAP plan that really blends the perspectives, ideas, and resources of everyone on the team. And it coordinates and shares the responsibility for completing tasks and assignments in the plan of care. It's really about everyone working together and no one having individualized agendas that are not included as part of the plan of care. Kim and I often like to use the term one family, one plan, one team.
And along with that, it also takes the commitment of all of the team members as well as state agencies and organizations to really hold a commitment to keeping youth within their families, within their community, and therefore community-based is something that we strive for, and we need to hold it dear to our heart, I guess I could say, that we actually believe or really believe that youth do better when they're with their families, in their home schools, in the areas that they're familiar with and have ties to, and how can we continue to build on those connections and the strengths of communities, and build up resources in the communities to support youth and their families. And so community-based is an important part of the principles that we want to follow as a part of Wraparound.
As we go around the other side of the circle, you'll see culturally competent. The word that you see used frequently. But when we talk about it in Wraparound, we want you to really think about a team developing a plan that's based on the unique values, beliefs, and really the culture of the family and their community. And it's important to remember that families live in communities and they have their own set of traditions, values, attributes, and beliefs. And we really try and incorporate and capture those as part of the plan of care.
And as part of being a strength-based process, which I know probably a lot of those you folks out there listening to this can relate to, there's a lot of movement towards strength-based planning and strength incorporation into the plan. But when we talk about infusing it into Wraparound, it's really very purposeful in seeking out the things that not only that the family does well, but also that the team does well, the strengths that the community have to offer, the communities that these that families live in, and purposely pulling those strengths out and using those in the planning process and using those as forms of motivation as well as using them to develop strategies in the plan of care and building off the things that people do well, the parents, the youth, as well as the other team members, those mandated members that we're going to talk about, the natural supports, those family and friends, and also we can't forget that it's also about what the community has to offer and the strengths that might be present or unique in a certain community that might differ from another.
So with unconditional care, we want you to really think about what that means. So often with youth with big behavior, especially youth that have and their families that have what we call failed up in the system, that they have ended up at the highest end of services, unconditional care really weighs in here because they're too used to being kicked out of services rather than someone committing to staying with them and promising unconditional care. And so when we talk about unconditional care and Wraparound, what we want you to think about that despite the challenges that may be present, that there is an unconditional commitment by the team to serve the youth and their family until the team really reaches an agreement around there's no longer a need for formal wraparound services. And this often happens in many ways. We hope that it doesn't happen in ways where maybe services have just ended or that a youth has aged out without actually the wraparound team completing their mission. What we like to see is when a family calls us up and says, you know what, we're going to call a team and we're good. And that's really what we're working toward, is working our way out of a job and staying committed to unconditional care with families, that they will then be able to do it on their own, eventually without us.
And the final wraparound principle is outcome-based, and we really want to be purposeful in tracking, are things getting better? And it's different than traditional kinds of treatment goals or those kinds of things that you think about, but we're really checking to see, is the family any closer to need met? have behaviors changed? Are things getting better? And these should be things that happen inside the team process, with the team monitoring what they're doing and how things are going. And remembering that just because a family or a youth gets a service, if you will, it doesn't mean that the need is being met. And sometimes we confuse those things. And so we really want to be purposeful in checking in and monitoring within the team process, and asking the family, are things getting better? Are behaviors changing? And are we closer to need met? And are we closer to their vision being attained? There are also four elements, key elements, that make Wraparound different from other person-centered practices that you may be familiar with, or team-based models that you've heard of. And these four elements are grounded in a strengths perspective, driven by underlying needs, supported by an effective team process, and determined by families. Grounded in a strengths perspective does reflect a basic commitment to not only strength seeking and generating, but building on those strengths, again, of not only the parents and the youth, but also of all the team members, the communities, and the service environments that we're working in. And for Wraparound to be considered high fidelity and quality practice, we need to incorporate that along with the others, which I'm also going to talk about. For driven by underlying needs, it's a core concept in Wraparound that is about underlying needs, not superficial, basic, or simply spoken needs. It's underlying causes or conditions, and we want to focus in Wraparound on not on meeting needs rather than containing problems, which I think is what we typically think about, is how can we plan around these behaviors. But we really want to begin to put that in the context of the family's life and history and things that have occurred before, to really look for what are those underlying conditions that are going on. The third thing that makes Wraparound unique is that it's supported by an effective team process, that it cannot be done by a single person, a single family, or a single organization. It really is predicated on the notion that a group of people working together around common goals are likely to produce more effective outcomes than would typically be seen by a single individual or organization or family. And then determined by families, and I don't know if Joanne wants to jump in on this, but it really is about the family's perspective being sought and understood, and is it being used to influence decision making in the team, and are we purposefully making sure that that happens? And really supporting a family in a community rather than a program. And this is one of the things that I see a lot, and I'm sure you guys are familiar with, but we can't just come in and swoop down and kind of pick up the family and support them in a program. We really have to get out into the community, get out into the places where the youth go, where the families live, and, the church, the community centers, those kinds of things, and supporting them to build resources in the community rather than sweeping them up into a program. And it's also about voice access and ownership, which Joanne's going to talk about later on in the presentation. And again, I want to reiterate that for Wraparound to be considered both high fidelity and quality practice, all four elements need to be present at the same time. So we need to be purposefully keeping these in the back of our mind, and holding true to a strengths perspective, continually looking for those underlying causes or conditions, making sure all planning is happening in a team and that families are active participants in that process.
So we've talked a little bit about what the Wraparound Team is, and what you've heard us say is that there's a group of people that come together with the family and really connect them through their natural community and formal support relationships. And that really means reaching out, as Kim said, to the community that the family lives in, reaching out to the grandmas and and grandpas and uncles and aunts and cousins and whoever the family calls when they're in need. And also the folks that are involved as far as formal support, the clinician, the teacher, school teacher, a psychiatrist, a doctor, whoever's involved on a regular basis and supports the family. Those are the folks that we want at the team meeting. They come together, they talk to the family, they really identify the strengths of the family. But one of the things that we do that's pretty unique is that we also identify the strengths of the team, because one of the things we do is utilize those strengths of everyone to develop and implement a plan that's really written with the family. It addresses what we have discovered as unmet needs and works towards a family's vision of really what they want things to look like. A lot of times I think that as we come in and providers come in and work with families, there's this idea that things need to be perfect, that for this child and family situation and the challenges that the child may be going through, that things need to be completely fixed or perfect. And as a parent of a child with emotional and behavioral challenges, I can tell you that sometimes it never gets fixed. It's really about helping the family learn to manage and helping the youth learn to manage when those behaviors become or interfere with daily life. And the team really works at being able to talk about those kind of things that are affecting families on a daily basis, rather than some of the higher level things that we might be talking about when the family's not involved. The team ideally should be an equal number of informal and formal support. So I say 50-50 because in the beginning we'd like for it to be that, and I know it's a struggle for everyone, but really getting those informal supports on the team is when you will start to pop and start to happen, because having the informal supports on the team really help us move toward a direction where the family's going to be working on a plan that's all theirs. The informal supports, of course, should increase over time. And again, at the end, if the family can call us and say, hey, I've got my informal supports here, we're having a team, we're good, we don't need you, that makes us very happy, because that's the goal, is for families not to be in the system forever. So the role of all team members is really to be able to think as creatively as possible when developing a plan of care. When Kim and I are traveling around the country and doing this training, and we start working on brainstorming ideas, we realize that participants in our trainings often have trouble getting past this piece of being able to kind of let go and be creative. Everyone tends to self-monitor or to think initially about solutions. We ask them to kind of put all that on the back burner and to really kind of let go and to be as creative as possible with no bad ideas. That's why a care coordinator is there, to help coordinate it and bring it all together. We also expect team members to effectively partner with other team members and to be willing to offer help in a different way. It doesn't always mean that everyone is our best friends and that everyone gets along perfectly. But what it means is people are able to say what they need to say, to get their concerns out in the open, and to be open-minded enough to really be able to work towards a consensus that's really going to work for that child. To participate in regular team meetings is a huge piece of it, and we know everyone's got busy schedules, and when you call someone up and say, we want you to be part of this team and you need to be here weekly or monthly or however often we are having the team meetings, people often anticipate that to be a burden. What we want people to think about when they join a wraparound team is that you're sharing the responsibility. You're coming together with a team, and oftentimes being part of that team alleviates some of the time constraints or requirements that might be in a part of it if you were doing the work individually. We also want people to take responsibility for the commitments that they make as part of the wraparound plan of care and to follow through on those. At each meeting, we like to check in and make sure that things that have been agreed upon have happened, and if they haven't happened, why. And if they need to be adjusted, that's all part of working together as a team. If everyone's open and honest about their ideas and willing to voice their concerns in a respectful way, then we see progress.
And I just wanted to add something about the team taking responsibility for commitments and the level of accountability as being a team member as part of the wraparound process is really high. And I think that that's the one thing as a facilitator, when I first started my journey through wraparound, was I didn't actually realize the level of accountability that I think all of the team members, the facilitator included, the level of accountability that we were held to as part of this process, because it does make everything kind of overt and out in the open for everyone to see, and you're having conversations around some serious things that are going on. And I think that that's a piece of the wraparound process that all team members should walk into with open eyes and recognizing the value of having that team together, but also what it looks like when you make a commitment. And if for some reason you don't follow through, the implications that that has to the team process, and that you're sitting around a table with your peers and colleagues and families and even people that you might know as part of the community, and making sure that we are actively participating in the process. And then one thing that I don't know if Joanne wants to talk about this, but when we've trained together in the past, when we talk about the creativity and trying to use a cliche, to think outside the box, when thinking about wraparound as a very high level of care, and that traditional services and supports have not been enough. And so by the time you get to wraparound, it's not enough to give more of the usual or more of the typical. And Joanne, I know she talked about it earlier and described that failing up. But that creativity is really important when you begin to think about how are you going to help the team and the family and the youth all participate in this process and really get help that's meaningful for them through part of this. And Joanne, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that
Okay.
Helping people think about when traditional services haven't worked, the importance of being able to bring in those informal supports. And sometimes that's, it makes a difference. It gets the family really involved in the process and allows them to own the process and realize that, it's up to them, that they are going to utilize their team to the best of their ability, but they're also going to create sustainability and really self-efficacy.
Yeah, and it's so important. So this is just what a typical team could potentially look like. It's not that every team would look the same, or that we're saying that all of these people need to be represented, but this just want to give you an idea about potential people for that. So you would have the youth and their parents, the family or youth partner, peer support, a neighbor or a friend, the therapist, the teacher, if they're involved in a religious organization, or maybe have the pastor, the priest, or the rabbi, the aunt or the uncle, the care coordinator or facilitator, maybe the coach for the family, and also the psychiatrist. And I know some of you may be looking at this and thinking, oh, the psychiatrist is never going to come. But you have to think about how can you incorporate the psychiatrist's input, and how do you give feedback back as part of this team process, even though they may not physically be there. And again, so this is just an example of what a team could look like in the process.
So how do we fully engage families in the team process? I hear this question so many times wherever I go. People struggle with getting families to fully engage, and one of the things that I've heard over and over again from families is that when they have as we've talked about, maybe had to fail up to get the right services for their child, and they've got to a point where everything's not working, that it's really hard to be engaged. And so as you meet those families, oftentimes they're resistant or reluctant to get involved. And we've done a lot of research on this to try and figure out, what are the elements that need to be present when we are able to really fully engage families. And this work that you see on this slide was done by Dr. John Whitbeck out of the state of Washington. And he did a research project that, to look at, when we get good outcomes for kids and families, what are the three elements, or not three elements, but, what are the elements that are present? And what came back after several iterations of the project were that there were three things that were present, surprising things that were present: access, voice, and ownership. So as I talk about this, I want you to think about that these are developmental. You start out with access. You start out with families having access from day one. It really occurs when the family and that includes the parent and youth, are offered valid, opportunities for inclusion, really in the process of deciding what sort of services will be provided to them and how they'll be delivered. In other words, family members have a seat at the table when the real work and planning gets going. And I think as a family member that's received services for my child, I know that there were many days that I spent outside of the room when other folks were doing the planning. And it's hard to buy into that if you're not involved in really making the decisions or being included, at least in the information that's happening. So then developmentally, the next step would be that if you've had access, that if you're involved, if you have a seat at the table, that the family's voice is going to be heard and that they're full partners in decision making about their own life. The youth and parents are not only present, have a seat at the table, but they're actually are having an opportunity to present their perspectives and to be heard during the planning process. They're able to say, hey, I don't think this is working for me, and maybe we could try something else, and that people will actually listen to them and modify and adjust what they're doing to respond to what the family's saying. For families, I think it's a unique experience and really one of the hallmarks of Wraparound. The third element is ownership, and ownership really exists when both the youth and parent feel that there's a sense of commitment to the course of action, which really was developed through their involvement in the planning process. And they identify with it, and they believe it's worthwhile because they've been involved in planning it, and they're committed to carrying it out. You know yourself that you probably are much more bought into a project when you've had a say about developing it and implementing it and planning it than you would be if someone else handed you a piece of paper and said, here's what you need to do, or here's what we're going to do. This really allows the family to own the process and to really be fully engaged partners. So I love this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. It comes from a long time ago, probably not so long ago for me, but probably a long time ago for a lot of you. But it's called collaborative partnerships, and this was actually out of the initial system of care work that was, or the CAST work that was being done so long ago. And it was really just an idea about equal partners. Doesn't mean that parents and professionals assume each other's roles, but rather respect each other's roles and contributions. I think initially when there was this movement to involve parents and that original push to be family-driven, or even really family-friendly or family-centered, and early on, back when system of care was getting started, there was this concern, I think, by professionals that families would come in and try to assume their roles, and that it would be difficult to deal with this. And really what Alan and Peter did was talk about that you don't assume each other's roles. You each have something to bring to the table. It's an important contribution. And while the professionals bring the technical knowledge and the expertise to the relationship, parents offer the most intimate knowledge of their children, and often special skills. And I know for myself, when I really felt that we were moving forward with my daughter's care, that it was really about working with a professional that was skilled, and I appreciated that so much, and I would have never given that up to try and do it on my own. And I think for them, they appreciated what I brought to the table, and we worked as a team, and that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about collaborative partnerships.
Sorry about that.
So the role of the family on the wraparound team. When we talked about putting these slides together, I think Kim and I talked a little bit about, well, do we include the role of the family and the role of the youth and the parents in all of this, or is that, or do we talk about the formal roles? And I really think that we decided that it was important for us to be able to talk about really the expectations for the parent and the youth on their own wraparound team. And so we really want you to think about when you talk to families and you explain wraparound and you talk about maybe what their role would be within the team, it's really for them to be able to identify those individuals and supports that they want on their wraparound team. Those are the people that they call in the middle of the night if they have a storm that blows off their roof, or if you're in a car accident or something happens to someone in your family. Those are the people you want to be on the team. Only the family or the parent and youth have that knowledge, and you really want them to be able to identify those individuals and support to be part of the team. You want them to participate in the child and family team and provide feedback about whether they think ideas that were discussed will work for them. This is often really, really hard to do for families. I have sat in so many meetings, and I've been one of those parents myself that have sat in meetings and really been reluctant to provide feedback because I didn't feel that it was my place or that I had the expertise. But Wraparound's different, and really to get that message across to families and how important it is to hear from them when they feel that things may not be quite right or that they're not working and that they may need to change a little bit to really work for their family. It's important also to consider the youth voice of what they want or how to include them in the development of their plan. It really is their plan, and they need to be part of that. I've been to too many wraparound teams when the youth hasn't even been present, and I'd like to say that that's not a child and family team, but we hear a lot of reasons for the youth not being included, and sometimes even the family not being included. That's not what we believe. We believe that the youth needs to be part of the team. We also feel that families need to be open to consider all possible ideas to solutions to obstacles in their plan. Again, this comes with that creativity. If they've tried it before and it didn't work, well, maybe it might be different this time, or maybe we need to think of some new ideas. And so to be really creative and to be open to those ideas, to be honest about their ideas and concerns, and then to really be accountable along with everyone else on the team for the commitments that they make to their team and wraparound. Fast fingering it here. So what should families expect from a wraparound? And to be active and fully engaged members of their wraparound team, I mean, that's what we want from families. But what they should expect is to be respected and for their voice to be reflected in their plan of care. They should expect for meetings to be held at times and locations that are most convenient to them. So often we see wraparound teams being held in business offices or traditional categorical service type arrangements rather than really being held out in families' communities at their home, ideally, and if that can't work, at some place in their community that will work and allow them to be able to be present. These are the barriers that really get in the way of families showing up. When meetings are held 2 hours away from their home, they don't show up. If they're held only during business hours, they don't show up. What we do in Wraparound is we really think about how that affects their attendance or their involvement in the team and make adjustments. The youth should be present at their own child and family team meeting. I think I said this before, but the caveat here is even if they're in out-of-home placement, in residential setting, or if they're in a hospital or detention setting, they need to be present. And sometimes that means that the team has to go to them. And sometimes that means there has to be special permissions to allow for the team to go to them. But that's when the team needs to come together even more than in a regular setting, because that's the time that the planning is so important and needs to happen. The care coordinator should work around common reasons given by others for the youth's absence, such as, oh, well, he's in school right now, or he has a doctor's appointment, or she doesn't want to come right now. You know, we kind of see those as obstacles, and you know, a really gifted care coordinator like Kim can really work around some of those reasons that are given and make sure that the youth is included in that meeting.
So the role of the care coordinator or facilitator of this process really in the beginning is to get to know the family and understand their culture and traditions, their relationships, the strengths that they have as a family, and begin to identify needs and to listen to that story for, you know, through the lens of that underlying need. And also listening to that family story to identify potential team members. Are we asking the questions around who is supporting the family during all of the things that they've gone through? And it's really the care coordinator's role to elicit that and to purposefully seek out the strengths and potential team members for the team, actually. And then blending all of those perspectives. So if juvenile justice is involved, if child welfare is involved, they have perspectives that are unique to them, that are unique to their mandates, their culture, and their organizations. And in addition to balancing that with the family's view on what's going on, and then also those other natural supports, maybe it is a grandparent or an aunt and an uncle, this other siblings, but because their perspective is going to be unique as well. And so the care coordinator really has to take responsibility for bringing all of these people together and eliciting these various perspectives. And then orienting those team members to the process of wraparound and what are their roles and responsibilities as part of participation in this process and explaining that to them. They also need to lead the team in that creative problem solving that Joanne and I were talking about before, that it really is kind of a fluid process in that you know, it's very stepped and I guess kind of concrete, but how do we blend all of these perspectives and bring all of these people together and manage the conflict and blend the perspectives to then get to this place where we can be creative and do things that might be typically not thought of or outside of our box, if you will, or outside of our traditional roles. The facilitator or care coordinator is also responsible for ensuring that regular child and family team meetings happen. Typically, this would be a minimum of every 30 days, according to like Medicaid guidelines and things like that. It needs to happen at least every 30 days. They need to ensure that the meetings are organized, that they're productive, that they're respectful of all of the team members, and leading the team in the creation of a plan of care. And as part of that plan of care, assigning tasks and garnering commitment from the team members regarding tasks and things that they're going to do in between meetings to make sure that everything is happening and that families are getting the help that they want. Ensuring these actions get carried out between meetings. So it could be things where the facilitator or care coordinator is calling all of the team members in between the meetings to find out how things went. Did things get done? Are there any issues that might need to be addressed at the next team meeting? Has anything come up that we need to have a crisis meeting? Like, is something urgent where we need to call an emergency meeting for some reason because something has happened? And really just following up and checking in to see how things are going with the team. Planning for crisis and always ensuring safety. And also, they are responsible for ensuring that all planning happens in the team. And this is a hard piece because I think that we get into the human service field because we want to help, and so we hear sometimes things that are going on and we just want to fix it. We just want to help. But it's really the role of the facilitator or the care coordinator to pull back from that and allow the team to come together and problem solve and make sure that things are moving forward and that progress is being monitored. And again, always ensuring safety. And how do they make sure that they're arranging services and interventions that are appropriate, that have been discussed in a team, that people aren't just throwing things in on the side or saying, oh, I think we should add this in or do this, that we really have a strong commitment to what it means to be involved in a team planning process and hosting those meetings, following the process, following those timelines, and really managing the flow of how all of that works, again, within the community instead of within a program. And that's why that facilitation, that mediation, the conflict resolution and blending of all of those perspectives is so important for the role of the facilitator.
So the role of the peer parent support partner in Wraparound is a little bit different than peer support or parent peer support in traditional services. I think that I am thrilled that we've seen this kind of explosion of parent peer support going on across programs. But in Wraparound, what makes it unique is that really that there's 3 areas that the parent support partner focuses on. And those areas are really working with the family, working with professionals, and also working with Wraparound. So in working with the families, there's a piece called recognition of self and others, and probably a more difficult way of saying, connecting with someone who's, walked in your shoes or been there, done that. One of the unique pieces of the parent support partner role is that they've raised a child with behavioral challenges, that they've received services, they've navigated the system. And one of the things that results from that for families and for parents is that there's a sense of loneliness. You isolate from friends, friends drop you, family drops you. There's a lot of kind of lost connections that happen when you're struggling to get services for your child. And the connection of meeting someone else that has been there really kind of breaks that loneliness and helps you as a parent realize that there's hope, that someone else has made it, and that it's wrapped up really in the ability of the parent support partner to provide that peer support. They're great usually at identifying resources. Oftentimes your parent support partner is pretty involved in the community, knows the community, knows where the resources are able to get the parent connected with those kind of no-cost, low-cost resources that are so important. Also, they really work at being able to carry the family's message back to the professionals. Sometimes families, especially early on, are very afraid or resistant to really being able to speak up. They, are oftentimes used to maybe their voice not being heard, that people not including them within their child's care, and they're reluctant to really say how they're feeling. And one of the beauties of having a parent support partner in the mix in wraparound is that they're really able to talk with the family, and until the family's able, to really get to the point where they're able to express all of their wishes, there's this piece about the parent support partner really being able to make sure that those messages are communicated to the other folks on the team, and really they work with the family to help the family be able to say that on their own. And then there's a huge piece of working with the family on building those kind of supportive connections, and really helping parents build and connect or reconnect with those that they've lost connection with all the natural support who will be involved with them long after the team is gone. And what we see with families and kind of with the involvement of parent peer support is that there's an ability to build that resilience, and can't do it by yourself, and having connections with others really helps build that. And so the parent support partner really focuses on that in their work that they're doing with the family. In working with professionals, it really, having someone that's walked in the parent's shoes really creates a situation where there's this understanding of the parent's perspective. So many times I've been able to use an instance maybe that I've experienced within my own family in receiving services for my child, and convey that to a professional that I might be working with who may not have even considered how something might appear to a family. And it helps give them that other perspective that they may not have even thought about, and really increases the likelihood that they'll be able to get to the point where they're able to help the family. Parent support partners partner with the Wraparound team to help complete the process. They are there to brainstorm and identify other options. They can help provide education to professionals, oftentimes about the things that are out in the community, or really about services that maybe that the family's tried, and help to kind of get the point across with what might be helpful and what might not be helpful. They are good at reassuring others that the family can succeed. They're a living example that they've been able to come through it, still standing, still walking on their 2 feet. And oftentimes they're the folks on the team, the wraparound team, that can say, this family deserves a chance, but this family can succeed. In working within wraparound, they're really there to, they are parent support partners first, but they are also second part of a wraparound team. And so they're there to build confidence really in the process of wraparound, and helping support their care coordinators and being able to convey that confidence in the process. They are there to really help to find ways to improve the process and fine-tune it, modify, adjust when needed, and they're also there to partner and collaborate with the care coordinators.
And so the role of the clinician or the therapist really is to consult with the team about clinical concerns. And I think in the beginning, it's really important that any assessments or data that's kind of been collected as part of, clinical intakes or whatever, that be brought into the team as well and shared, and use that to consult with the team. They would also, of course, provide direct interventions based on hopefully current best practices or evidence-based practices, and consistent with team decisions as outlined in the plan of care. And when we think about that, I think that it's important to recognize that the family should have input into that process, and what the clinician's focus will be in what Joanne was speaking about earlier, where it's not about assuming each other's roles, but really working together. And an informed team can actually help the process go more smoothly, and ensure the focus are things that are important to the family or to the youth, as a part of participation in clinical care. The clinician would also translate any clinical information for the entire team. So really informing and educating around clinical concerns, anything that might be going on as a result of their therapy or things that they're involved in, and really participate in building strategies that everyone can implement. And with always kind of in the back of their head that notion of safety, what is clinically appropriate for the youth or the family if they're working with, one of the parents or something like that. I actually had the benefit of participating as a clinician prior to getting involved in Wraparound as a clinician in a Wraparound team. And I can tell you that from my perspective, it was so helpful to be a part of that and to watch the dynamics unfold and to have a whole team. I mean, it almost felt like I had a team, that it wasn't, and it really, I think, helped my practice and my work that I was doing with children, helped it to be more effective and worked better because of my participation in that team process and the information that I could garner from the team process, as well as being able to utilize some of the things that we would typically see in a therapeutic setting be utilized across the team members and across settings. So being able to talk to the school, for instance, about some things that they were seeing or some things that they had tried that had worked, and then being able to utilize those and help the team to understand that. And maybe I could use some of that in my clinical work, as well as pulling the clinical perspective into the team and really partnering with everybody. And I found it really helpful to be a part of that process as a clinician. And then it's also helpful to have that perspective when we think about those creative strategies and things that we want youth in particular to be involved in when there's some serious behaviors that we want to manage, because we want to make sure that not only the youth is safe, but also other people and the community are safe. And being able to be part of that and building, not just shutting down those creative things, but really thinking about how could this youth participate in some things that would be considered normal or things that, all kids want to participate in, and how can we do that safely and effectively so that they gain that experience. And so it was really awesome being part of that, being a clinician on a team. There's also roles for mandated team members, and the mandated team members, when we talk about this, is around maybe child welfare workers or juvenile justice workers, that there is an expectation that they should participate in the child and family team meetings, and hopefully we can actually make their lives easier and better in the work that they have to do. But also, they need to bring all of their mandates or court orders or anything that's going on as part of their agency practice that's pertinent to what's going on specifically with the youth or the parents, and providing that information so it can be incorporated into the plan of care. And then participating in the creation of the safety plans. And, we know that for child welfare, their mandate is child safety, and for juvenile justice, it's community safety. And so how can we incorporate the things that are important to them into this process, again, utilizing the multiple perspectives of everybody there, and how can we infuse some creativity in that process as well. So ensuring the incorporation of the plans that maybe they're required to complete is how can we pull those into the wraparound plan so that things are clear for the family and for all of the team members about what has to happen or what needs to happen. So we really can get to that one family, one plan, one team. And then including the wraparound team in other meetings that might happen, or bringing that information into the child and family team meeting, and can those child and family team meetings meet the criteria of their mandates for their agencies? In some states, they can do that, where maybe a team decision-making model that's used in child welfare, they can actually participate as part of a wraparound process, and that would count as part of their mandates for team decision-making. And also, these mandated team members would need to keep everyone informed about what's going on, and vice versa. So anything that would happen in the team would then need to go back to these team members, so that everyone can stay on the same page and working together. The cool thing that I've seen happen with this is that the juvenile justice workers or child welfare workers oftentimes can take that wraparound plan of care back into court, and advocate for the family and share this with the court systems. It decreases their workload, gives them kind of a team, if you will, for them to go back into court, to have someone that has their back too. And I feel like sometimes they don't feel like they do have that. And so it's a neat thing to watch that happen, where we can partner with these mandated team members in a beneficial way that works for everybody.
So the role of direct support really is those folks that we have on the team that are sometimes known as behavioral specialists or therapeutic behavioral specialists. And when I worked in Los Angeles, I had the advantage of being able to work within a wraparound model and a wraparound team that actually had that role as part of the wraparound team. It was a model that combined a care coordinator, parent partner, and a direct support person. And it was a model that allowed a person to really, a behavioral specialist type person, to really be able to come in and do some direct work with the youth primarily, but also the family. And some of the things that having that role as part of a team can do is they can really work to help stabilize situations. Especially if there's something going on with a youth or family, they're able to kind of diffuse the situation so that the family can have a sense of balance. They are there to really be able to help teach skills and identify the skills that the parent or the child may want to learn or need to learn, and to strategize about how to best teach it and do it quickly so that they can get it done and move out and really move out. Change the reputation of the child. Oftentimes kids with big behaviors have a real reputation that precedes them. I know in many of the counties I worked in, there's always a few kids that everyone seems to know their name. And one of the things that's and beauty of having a direct support involved is that they can really help change that reputation. They can provide a new image for the child or maybe the family in the eyes of the community. And really by partnering with them, getting out, maybe, attending Little League games, even hanging out at the mall. I mean, there's lots of ways that this role can contribute to the wraparound process. They're there like the parent support partner to really help build connections and create that social network to really create success for the child and family. Oftentimes, youth that are involved in RAP have been kicked off of teams, off of football teams or soccer teams because they've acted out too much. Maybe they've been kicked out of school. And by having a behavioral support person involved, they're able to kind of reconnect and create that social network. They're also great at getting stuff for the team. And by this, I mean linking the child and the family with resources that are out in the community. I have an asterisk here, because I think that there's a little bit more that I want you to consider about this role. We don't always have this role involved as a paid member of the wraparound team. And so I want you to think, as you're putting together your wraparound team, that this role can really be formal or informal. Um, and by that I mean someone that's paid to do it, or really someone that's unpaid. I love that no cost, low cost idea when it comes to working with families, because it's someone that's going to be there long after we're gone. Um, and sometime or another, everyone on the wraparound team may be called on to offer direct supports to the family. And it's what we do. I think the point is that sometimes you need to do what's really the most helpful rather than what your role is on the team.
And sometimes I know we don't have a special slide for teachers or school personnel, but thinking about those direct supports and the folks at the schools see the youth, for a lot of hours during the week. And I've found their input to be very helpful, not only in behavior and kind of what works for the youth or what triggers or what's going on, but also in this role of kind of a direct support, how crucial and important they can be to the team, not only to give information, but to take some of that stuff back into the school setting that might be outside of their role. Teachers like to be creative and they like to do fun things. And so they've also, I've found, to be a great support in a team providing some of this stuff. And so I think Joanne's point of being helpful rather than what's on your role is one to really consider when you think about who are the important people in a family's life and who's providing support to them and what that looks like, and where they can bring or where their strengths can be utilized in the team that might be different than their job or their profession that they bring to the table. And so the wraparound team really is committed to one family, one plan, and one team. And Joanne and I have made reference to this throughout, this presentation, and when we go out and work with states, that sometimes it gets a little overwhelming, especially if a family is involved in multiple systems and there's mandates around certain plans and what gets created, and how do those ideas come together and get incorporated into one plan and build and work within one team to all work together and hold each other accountable for results. And are they tracking? Are things getting better? Are we moving forward? And is everybody taking on the tasks that they were assigned, the roles that they're in? Are people making a commitment to continue achieving success and working with the family for sustainable, again, once wraparound ends, what's going to continue and how can the family be supported? And the team is also committed to brainstorming creative ways to meet complex needs. And I think the team sometimes gets caught up in big behaviors, and we need to kind of step back from that a little bit, again, ensuring safety, and I don't want to take that away from families, but also recognizing that sometimes we get caught up in that and we're so busy reacting to big behaviors that we forget to look for that underlying need, and we think that we can't be creative in the strategies that we use, and we can. And so having that commitment to say, wait, hold on just a second, let's go back to this process and see where we are. They also agree to a common approach and goal, that they understand their roles and responsibilities. They understand what it means to plan as part of a team rather than individually kind of working in parallel to each other, but really working together. And then celebrating all of those accomplishments that they achieve together, because everybody's put a lot of hard work into this. And I can't emphasize enough tracking progress. Our needs being met. Is the family any closer to their vision? Are behaviors changing? Are things getting better? And a commitment to monitoring that within the team process. Joanne, did you want to add anything to that?
I'm good.
Okay.
So how do you know when you're on a high-functioning team? And this should be a quiz for everybody, Kim, that we do at the end.
Yeah, we could do that. We could
Yeah,
do
we could
that.
do that next time. So really, if you're on a high-functioning team, you're probably not going to be using jargon, language that the family might not understand. I like to say that your language needs to be simple enough for 80-year-old grandma to understand it. And if you're on a high-functioning team, that's really the kind of language that you're going to kind of hear within the team. Instead of talking about behavioral challenges or incidents or that have happened, they're really discussed more in terms of, let's look at why that might have happened and what's the underlying need, and really about trying to figure out how we can maybe change what we're doing to help alleviate those challenging behaviors. It's not about deciding, this child's behavior is too big for wraparound, and placing them in a more restrictive environment. We work to keep kids at home with their family and in the community, and that's what a high-functioning team does. Also, the discussions within the team are pretty well distributed across all members of the team, and everyone talks, everyone contributes, and makes an extended or important contribution to the team. It's like in baseball, you don't have one hero and nobody else on the team succeeds in a winning team. It's everybody's put in their effort. An objective or verifiable data is really used as evidence of success, progress, or lack thereof. We can prove that what we're doing, that things are getting better. We monitor it all the time. A community team member and natural support really have a clear role on the team. They don't just show up and hang out and kind of listen to all the stuff that goes on within a team. They're contributing, and they're taking on tasks, and they're making sure that they are fully involved and full-on team members. The plan of care that's developed as part of the Wraparound team really represents a balance between the formal services and the informal supports. And we'd like to see the informal supports increase over time and the formal services decrease. Doesn't always happen, but that certainly is a goal of a high-functioning team. The key natural support people for the family are there at the team meetings, and they're present. I've been on teams in the past where 6 months down the road we figured out that there were people that the family saw all the time and were helping them out and doing things that were really important, and somehow we missed that person. Those people need to be there. They need to be on the team. That's what helps you create that creative planning. In designating or designing strategies, team members really consider and build on the family's strengths and are able to match those with interventions to really get to a better place. And providers and agency representatives at the meeting demonstrate that they're working as part of the team and working for the family and not working from a different agenda. This is often very, very difficult when you may first start working with what we call mandated team members, folks that come that really do have an agenda that they have to acknowledge and have to keep to. What we hope that can happen is that agenda gets included as part of the wraparound plan of care, and that they won't need to have a separate agenda. We just hope we can be more creative around figuring out how to make it happen. So that would be kind of the things that you would expect to see on a high-functioning team, and really what we've been talking about during this presentation. Last thoughts for you: coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success. And that's Henry Ford. Kim?
So here are some resources. We have the NWI website, the Institute's website at the University of Maryland. some wraparound information, the resource guide, the NWI, the evaluation and research team. We also want to recognize Pat Miles, and then her and John Franz's website, paperboat.org, are also here for you. And here is our contact information, and we want to thank you for participating with us today, and happy teaming. It's a little shorter than the last one, but that's okay.